Welcome, everyone, to Coffee with a Codex. My name is Dot Porter, and I am a curator in the Schoenberg Institute for Manuscript Studies in the Kislak Center for Special Collections, Rare Books, and Manuscripts in the University of Pennsylvania Libraries. SIMS, or the Schoenberg Institute, is a research and development institute focused on manuscripts, and we have some pretty great physical collections. And once a week on Thursday at noon Eastern Time, I get on Zoom and show you a manuscript from our collection. So that's what we're doing today. If you have been here before, welcome back. It's always great to see familiar faces. And if you're new, welcome. It's great to see new faces too. So, right. It's pretty informal. If you have questions or thoughts as we go, don't hesitate to drop them in the chat. My colleague Amy Hutchins is here. She is our cataloging librarian and she knows the manuscripts really well. She will watch the chat, I will watch the chat. And let's go ahead and get started because I feel like there's a lot going on with our manuscript today. So this is MS Codex 1881. This is a relatively new manuscript for us. I remember when we acquired it. I'm just looking at the notes to remind myself. It was Penn Provenance. Right, we purchased it in 2017. It had been owned by Conception Abbey, which is a monastic house, I think in Missouri. And it was the only medieval manuscript that they had, and they just didn't feel like it was really the place for it. And so they approached us, and we bought it, and it's great for our collection. It is a collection of astronomical texts and also a lot of diagrams. So there's a lot of interesting stuff to look at. I haven't opened it yet because I actually really love the binding. So I want to talk about the binding for just a second. The binding is new, like in terms of manuscripts, you can't get much more new than this. It was actually rebound in 2008. So this is a 15-year-old binding, which is in terms of bindings, it's very new. It was bound by someone called Richard C. Baker in St. Louis, Missouri. And the thing that I love about this binding is it's clearly designed to look like a 15th century parchment binding. We have manuscripts in our collection that have bindings that look very much like this. So it's made of parchment, and it has these leather ties that can be used to tie together. You can see these leather sort of bits that come through here. This is what's holding the text block, that is the bunch of pages here, onto the binding, so you can sort of see how it's all connected. It's got end bands, new end bands up here. So again, this is sort of sewing the top and also the bottom together. And this is what's holding the end bands onto the binding. And I was just noticing that the parchment itself has signs of the animal on it, which if you've been here before, you know this is something I'm into. I don't know if you can see it that well. There's these little black dots here. That's hair follicles. So this was what we call the hair side of the parchment. This was the outside of the animal, probably a calf. And so it's been really nicely prepared. So it's this beautiful, creamy parchment, new parchment. But we can still see that, and there's also sort of lines, and I don't know if you can see that I think is blood, like blood vessels. So things that you can see in it that remind you that this comes from an animal, which I just think is really neat. Okay, enough of the binding. Let's take a look inside. So as I said, it's a collection of astronomical diagrams and texts, and I have a list. The record is actually really, really great because it has a whole list of everything that's in it. Not all of our records always do this. So the first text is Theoreca Planetarum, which is a text, I am guessing, about the planets, planetarum. So even here, it opens up with some diagrams and a volvelle over here. So what is a volvelle? A volvelle is a type of movable diagram where you have, instead of just having a drawing, which is what most diagrams are, it's just a drawing on the page, you have layers of paper or parchment. These are paper. The whole manuscript is made of paper except for the binding, that are attached together. There's like a string probably that goes through the middle, and then you can move the different pieces to help you do calculations. So it's sort of a movable way to do calculations. So here is a string. The strings are directing you up and down. And then you move this one in the middle, and you've got another string. Around the edges, you have the signs of the zodiac. So here's Aquarius, Pisces, Aries, and I am not a specialist on the history of astronomy. That's sort of as far as I'm getting. But what it's doing is it's like a practical way for people who are reading the book to interact and sort of figure things out. You're going to see a lot of diagrams and notes and things as we go through. So you can see there's diagrams that are going to be sort of part of the main text. Like this is obviously, this page was left blank, so you can write in diagrams. And then there's going to be a lot of things in the margins. So later writings around in the margins. The text itself appears to be a little bit incomplete just because there is space that's left for an initial that hasn't been added. And this is something that we see a lot. But even though the text was not complete, clearly it was being read and being used because somebody came through, multiple people, and added texts. All right. Oh, and here is an initial. So maybe they had planned to do a fancier initial at the front and didn't get around to it, because we do have our alternating blue and red. If you've heard my speech about the alternating blue and red before, there you go. All right, so the next text is, we still have several pages to go here. Let me know if you want me to zoom in at any point to sort of see things a little bit more. But I will sort of turn through and we can see it actually looks like some of these diagrams, well, maybe not. I'm trying to see if they were all added at the same time or if any of them were added later. Because this one in the middle, maybe it's just a different pen, but it looks like it's lighter and these on the other sides are darker. But this one doesn't intersect, so it looks like this one was added after. There. So Joyce is asking, what is the drawing at the left? So let's see. We have Luna, Luna, Luna. So it looks like it's something about the moon moving, then eclipse, totalis eclipse, Luna. So I think this is a sort of diagram of not the phases of the moon, but maybe a lunar eclipse, where it's moving across, or the sun is moving. I don't know. Again, I am not a specialist, but if you have ideas, but it's certainly something about the movement of the moon. And this says totalis eclipse Luna, so I'm going to take it at its word. And the top, yeah, so Amy says the top is a partial eclipse. So we have, oh right, partial eclipse because the moon is, part of the moon is visible up over the top. And then here the moon is completely covered, and so there's the total eclipse. So I think that's what we're dealing with here. Yeah. Okay. So the next section, oh, I skipped ahead, but I'm going to go ahead and, because these are, oh, you can't see them, sorry. We have some nice colorful diagrams here now. So this next text is Sphera Mundi. So the spheres And the diagrams that go along with it are, you see the same diagrams in different copies. So the diagrams themselves get copied over and over. We have other manuscripts that have these same diagrams here. Joyce says pretty red. Yes, it's very bright. The red is bright, the blue is bright. I don't know if we know if this was added later. I'm looking at Amy. We don't know. Yeah, so it could be, so the yellow here, I think that's contemporary with the manuscript, definitely. The blue and red, less so. So the spheres, so the theory of the spheres was the belief from ancient Greece through the Middle Ages up until Copernicus, that all the objects that you see in the sky, the moon and the sun and the planets and the stars, are not physical objects the way that we think of them up there, but they're embedded in spheres that are within each other, and the spheres themselves are what move. So like layers of material that hold the sphere, the planets and the sun and the moon and stars in it, and the earth is at the center. So this text is about that, basically describing the spheres and where everything, and here is a diagram that you've probably seen. This is how they conceived of these spheres. So in the center, you have Terra, you have Earth, and then you have, or I guess you have Terra, in this case, we have the middle, and then we have Terra, Aqua, Air, Ignis. So you have Earth, water, air, fire, and then you have, outside of that, then you start having the sun and the planets and the stars on the outside. And so we can even see here's the sun over here and the moon. So this is how they sort of conceived of the universe with the earth in the middle. So you're going to see this diagram a lot in manuscripts like this one. I'm also noticing over on this page that there is a lot of sort of close written text, and then there is this text, which is slightly larger and has space between it. And I'm going to guess that this is some kind of quote or like an original text, and then this is sort of commentary on it. This is a really typical way that you see this formatted in a manuscript. So even though I don't really know what it's saying, that is what seems to be happening here. Claire is asking about the script, and I think it's like I'm not going to say. Does it say in the Gothic cursive script by multiple hand? Yeah, so it's a Gothic cursive. I am not a paleographer. Amy is the paleographer on the call, but I will say it looks German. There's something about German cursive script that is really, you can always tell, or I can always tell when I see it, that it has this really particular look. Let's see. So I'm going to keep going. We have more. Here we have aqua, air, and fire around it. So this is the same diagram as before, only smaller, with fewer layers and with a little bit of color, so you can sort of see how they thought. We are going to see more volvelles. It's one of the fun things about this manuscript. So here is a little volvelle here. This one, oddly, or not oddly, but it's in a triangle shape. Usually they're circular, so this is sort of interesting. Again, I'm not sure what this is supposed to be representing, but we have three corners that have A, B, and C, and then the center, and we can it's sort of fun to push it around anyway. All right. It looks like this is diagrams measuring sort of the angles. Again, we're thinking about the spheres up in the sky. We're looking at angles. Here's Terra, and I think that's Luna and the sun. And so we're looking at the stars and sort of measuring angles to see them. This is a big concern, or seems to be, for the texts that we have in this manuscript. Let's see. Ooh, here we go. So, did they think that the Earth was flat? No, they didn't think the Earth was flat. They knew that it was round or curved. And here is a diagram showing when you're in a boat on the ocean and the Earth curves in front of you. How can you measure that? So that's what is happening here. It's this curvature, which is pretty neat. All right, let's keep going. All right. Next, once we get through here, we're going to have Alphonsine tables. Here's more of this main text with little bits of commentary filled in, including here interlinear, that is between the lines, interlinear commentary even. Let's see. So the Alphonsine tables will be coming up. Actually, I'm going to get distracted because there's another volvelle. I find these really distracting. There we go. So looks like this is the horizon, and again, I'm not entirely sure what this is supposed to be measuring, but it's neat. I like thinking about the people who would have actually used that to figure stuff out. I like that a lot. Let's see. Ooh. I wish I could share with you all how this book smells. It is not, ooh, what's this? Terra. Here's a nice big diagram. Let me see. This is 33 verso. 33 verso. Large climate zone world map. So climate zones. So this was another way that folks in the Middle Ages and before would sort of conceive of the Earth. So this is the Earth. And they thought of it in terms of climate zones, which goes from the middle, which is very hot, to the poles, which is cold. And where is it better? They thought of it in terms of where is it nice to live. And it's not great to live in the middle zone because that's very hot and difficult. And it's not nice to live in the poles because that's too cold. It's nice to live in the middle, like Europe is in the middle, right? The people who are making these are European. But this is kind of interesting because usually when you see these, they're quite small and it just shows you the zones. But here I'm seeing Asia and I think Africa and Ethiopia. So they've are actually putting places in to show you which climates they're in. Unfortunately, I am not very good at figuring out this script, although I can recognize it immediately. Actually figuring out what the words are is really difficult for me. But I think this is really, this is very cool. And I expect that the red was put in first and then somebody came in and filled it in. There are apparently a lot of different hands in this manuscript, so it wasn't like one person, it was a lot of people. So here we have at least some directions. So Oriens, which is east, Occidens, which is west, and then it's going to be north and south. So there we go. Let's see. Here is another volvelle here. So again, around the edges, we have the signs of the zodiac, so the sky. And then this is sort of, it looks like it's measured specifically to identify this with a specific sign. So we're actually moving through the year, if you can think of it that way, moving through the year. And then this, that's not moving easily, so I won't touch that. But this is another thing. So sort of cycling through. All right, here we have another volvelle. We have the sun, and I don't know what this orange guy is. Maybe that's the moon, and this is Terra. So this is the Earth. And then again, we're moving through the year. So we have the zodiac signs going through here. Oh, I just saw that Amy put in Aylin's project. Aylin did a whole project on a lot of diagrams in this manuscript, so that can be a really useful one to look at. Let's see, and Kristen asked, I'm not familiar with medieval astronomical texts. Is it common for them to have several marginal notes and commentary? Yes, it's quite common. And it's really neat because it shows that people were using the books, which is exciting. It's exciting to see. Over here, we have diagrams of eclipses. So here is a solar eclipse because we have the moon blocking the sun, and here we have the lunar eclipse because we have the Earth going between the sun and the moon. So that's kind of neat that they did have this, they knew how all of this worked. Okay, then we have a blank page. This is actually pretty cool because this page has been ruled but never written on. So you don't always get to have a good sense of sort of how the page was prepared. But here you can see there were lines, I don't want to say drawn down because it's not like a pencil. It's more like it was inscribed in the paper. And then the lines were drawn across both sides to do that. It may have been done, one of the ways that this is done is by prick marks on the edges, so you could have a sheet with prick marks equidistant on both sides, and then you would use those as guides. But if it did have prick marks, it's been trimmed off, so it's not really possible to see how that was done. But I like that. So we have a couple of blank pages. Now we have these Alphonsine tables, and Alphonsine tables are so neat. To me. Again, I don't really know how to read these, but the idea is that they provided data for computing the position of the sun, moon, and planets relative to the fixed stars. And it varies. The numbers that you're going to get is going to vary depending on where you are. So there will often be ones for specific cities. And in this example, apparently, I understand that these ones that have been sort of added in the bottom are for specific cities in Germany, which is helpful for figuring out where the manuscript was made and where it was made to be used, because you're not going to go through the trouble of putting in calculations for cities. Well, you might, but especially because they've been sort of added in the margins, it's more a little more personal. Like, I'm going to be in Mainz, so I'm going to make a little chart so I know where the stars are going to be or where the planets are going to be at that time. Someday I will figure out how to actually read these tables. Today is not that day. I just think it's so neat to see them and also to think about people using them. Oh, here are some prick marks. I was mentioning prick marks, and Jan was saying that that, apologies if I'm mispronouncing your name, that calligraphers still use them. But here's when I'm talking about prick marks, it's these little holes in the paper, and this is interesting that there's two sets of parallel lines here. There's a little bit of mystery around how prick marks were put in. I think of a pizza cutter with needles on it. Apparently nothing like that has ever been found, like the actual physical object. But it seems like otherwise you're going to have like a ruler and you're putting in prick marks by hand. I don't know. Although I think the last time, a pounce wheel, is that what's used for textiles? Because I feel like the last time I talked about this, somebody was like, oh, they use that for textiles. Which, yes, thank you, Claire. And I thought, I'm going to have to look into that, and then I didn't. But it seems like that is something that makes a lot of sense. So I'm skipping ahead a little bit just because there's a lot of tables. And I'm thinking maybe there's more. Ooh, we're getting towards the end of this. But let's see. There's a treatise on solar eclipses, which makes me think there might be more diagrams coming up. Here we have alternating red and blue, blue and red. That's my favorite. And it's really, gosh, it's really pretty. For a manuscript that's a little messy, it's also very, very pretty. I think the initials are pretty. Like somebody took their time to make those nice. Let's see. We have more text about canon tables, I think. Certainly more sort of notes in the margins. I promised you a treatise on solar eclipses. It's further. Oh, look at that. That is very nice. Can you see that? Somebody took some time making that little decoration in this. That's really nice. Okay. Here we go. Solar eclipses. So we've got some more diagrams here. Here's a little one. Not as nice as the earlier ones, but we've got, I'm not even sure. That doesn't look like one I've seen before, which makes it hard for me to figure out what exactly it is. And then another one up here, which actually reminds me of the one we looked at, the lunar one that we looked at earlier, where it was showing the movement of the moon across the sun, or the behind the sun. Makes me think maybe that's something similar there. Oop, and then there's more tables, which are interesting. But since I can't, oh, okay. This is mentioned in the, let's see, this will be the last thing that I will talk about. Where is this? Hebrew. Come on. Where are you? Notes on the tables. Oh. Hebrew alphabet and a few Hebrew transliterations. So we turn it sideways here. So here's the Hebrew alphabet identified, and some transliterations, including Magdeburg. So I'm not sure if this is Magdeburg or this is Magdeburg. But one of them is, and it looks like somebody later came in. I think that's a later hand. So, wow. So it's like this very, I don't know what this is doing here in an astronomical treatise. I don't know if there was space and they decided, oh no, here we go, Magdeburg. There it says Magdeburg. I don't know. But sometimes this happens. You'll be going through and everything makes sense, and then all of a sudden, there's a thing, and I don't know why. It may fit in some way that I don't understand with the rest of the text, but it's sort of interesting to have this here. So that is the end of MS Codex 1881, and we're a little over time, but thank you for sticking around. This has been really fun, and I'll be back next week. And I hope I'll see you all again and have a great week.